Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 100th episode of Amplify Your Business. In fact, a very special episode because we're mixing things up, and I'm actually going to interview your host, low this many years, Lance Johnson. Lance, welcome to my show. I know it's good to be here.
Thanks a lot, Matt. Really appreciate you taking the time to interview me and inviting me on to Amplify Your Business. Yeah.
Well, it's one of those things that I do. So for the folks at home who have never seen this show before, and there are a lot of them, tell us what Amplify Your Business is about.
Well, Amplify Your Business is basically a video podcast in which I get the opportunity to interview a bunch of entrepreneurs. And so, like you said at the top, we've done 100 interviews to date, actually a little bit more because it takes us a little while to get them ready and prep for publication. And so we have probably interviewed about 120 entrepreneurs so far, actually, in the 2 years. And so we started this at the very beginning of COVID, actually immediately when COVID hit. This was a plan of mine prior to COVID occurring, and then we pivoted it to being just a Zoom platform-based show because of COVID, obviously. And what I wanted to do is showcase entrepreneurs and showcase the stories behind their entrepreneurial journey. So what motivated them to get started in business? How did they find themselves at the place in which they were at? And then with COVID, it was a lot in the early days anyway, talking about how they were pivoting their businesses to adapt to COVID, which I thought was really interesting because the people who would be listening, other entrepreneurs, we were all struggling with the same challenges as to, okay, now with this lockdown, what do we do? How do we manage our businesses? And so I thought that would inspire a lot of entrepreneurs to look at their businesses slightly different and also give them a little bit of hope if they could see somebody doing well or at least surviving, if not thriving through COVID.
So it really started as something that was a response to the pandemic and has now evolved into a place for you to inspire young entrepreneurs. Am I correct?
Well, not really a response to, because we were planning this prior to the pandemic. And so it was just the timing of it ended up being that we needed to pivot ourselves into the Zoom atmosphere or environment instead of doing them in person. So originally the plan was to visit businesses and meet them in their places of business and capture their stories there. And we still have managed to do a few of those through the pandemic when we did have the different openings at different times. And so in our archive of 100 episodes, there would be a handful of them that did take place in their business. But as a response, we basically kept, the majority of them anyway, Zoom, so remote. And it seems to be working well, and it has allowed us to expand our reach beyond, our immediate area, which we're in Edmonton. And so we can talk to businesses all around the world through Zoom and get their stories. And I think that has been a really nice side effect because we probably wouldn't have started here and we would have been then a lot more local in our exposure, which now we can help businesses all over the world share their ideas and their entrepreneurial journeys and what they're doing that's unique and exciting.
So it doesn't just involve Canada or Alberta, like you actually interview people all over the place now.
Yeah. In fact, actually, even on holidays, I've had the opportunity to bring along a camera and record some in person. And so one I did on a yacht, actually, in the marina down in Cabo here back in November of 2021, I guess it was. And so, we definitely mix it up a little bit and have people from all over the place talk about their businesses. Because that's the thing with entrepreneurship, it doesn't really matter where you're at. There's a lot of common challenges. And that's really what I wanted to tease out, because with those challenges, there's common lessons then. And if we can just save, one other entrepreneur from repeating the same kind of mistakes that we as entrepreneurs often repeat, it would just be wonderful, like if we could just save them the heartache, the headache, and the cost of some of those mistakes too.
So after listening to 100 people brag about themselves, what are some of the key takeaways that you would give to young entrepreneurs?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I wish that you would have given me these questions in advance so I could really come across as thoughtful as I'd like to be. But one of the things that seems to have resonated with a lot of the more successful entrepreneurs that I've interviewed, the ones that have been able to establish their businesses and really grow them rapidly, has been a need, or what they perceived anyway, the value of having a board of advisors. And so those could be paid or non-paid advisors. We've interviewed people who have used both models. And I thought that was interesting because it was coming up quite regularly, actually, in a lot of the people that we were interviewing. And so that's something that I personally never did have. Very, very informal advisors or mentors or coaches, I guess I would say, but I never did actually employ a formal structure for that. And so some of them were saying, my success is directly related to that. And in some cases, those people became investors even in their businesses, which helped them as well. But more importantly, it gave them some guidance in the areas in which they had some shortcomings, because an entrepreneur doesn't know everything, right, about the business world, or even maybe even about their industry. They might be quite specialized. And so it's good to have that broader perspective. And then it also opens a lot of doors. So a lot of the startups in particular were really talking about just the value they were finding from some of the advisory boards that they had in place. Another one that was a point that came up a lot too was accounting and the numbers, knowing your numbers and making sure your books are in order. That was one of the big mistakes that a lot of them actually had mentioned. What I said, if you could go back in time and do something slightly different, what would you have done differently, knowing what you know now? And a lot of them said, if I would have paid more attention to the books and setting that up properly. And the third one, I guess, that really pops into my mind right now anyway, is hiring. So a lot of them were talking about, if I could go back in time, I would have hired key people sooner than what I thought that I needed them, because it really limited my growth in retrospect, because I wasn't able to fill the gaps in my abilities, my knowledge, or just my time constraints that I have. If I had that additional person on the team sooner. And that didn't matter if it was, a 20-person team that they were operating with, but they needed that CFO, or they needed that chief marketing officer, or they needed, somebody else in a key role. There was a lot of people that were saying I would have hired sooner.
So you've interviewed over 100 entrepreneurs with different stories to tell. Which of them is your favorite?
Oh, I don't know if I could pick a favorite. I mean, yeah. I don't know if I could even recall all 100 of them as clearly as I'd like to right now. Some of my favorites were definitely the startups. I get really excited talking to startups because the potential that I see in what problems they're trying to solve is just so vast oftentimes. And so I'm one of those people who, are a real cheerleader, I think, in terms of cheering for the underdog or cheering for that startup and really wanting them to succeed. And, at Ample Media, that's the reason why we started the company, was so that we could help them do better, that they could market themselves better so they could succeed. And so it's just natural, I think, for me to really, really cheer and gravitate to those startups. So there was some incredible startups that we've had the opportunity to talk to. One of the more recent ones, it was Simtech MD. And so this one, McKay, had just such a novel financial model that he was deploying. So he was actually creating essentially a learning metaverse for medical students who then would actually earn tokens for taking courses within the metaverse. And the whole financial model that he had was actually through this blockchain token metaverse environment that he was creating. And so completely non-traditional in terms of financing, but because everything was tokenized within this learning platform, it was kind of self-funding their development, which is just absolutely fascinating. And those kinds of things just make my head hurt as I try to think through that and really understand it. But at the same time, it's just really exciting to see somebody take such a novel approach to something as challenging as financing your startup. and the AI space, we've interviewed a few people in AI, and again, I don't know if you can even call it emerging technology now, because it's kind of seems to be embedded into so many things that we interact with on a daily basis now. But, some of the AI companies, you listen to what they're doing, what they're creating, the problems that they're solving, and you know that these are going to be profound changes to our lives, really. And so some of those companies were just really fascinating. Run With It Synthetics is one that really jumps to mind, just because they were creating these synthetic worlds or populations or cities in which they could actually query the people, the synthetic people within these cities, with all sorts of different problems or challenges, and introduce new parameters to their daily lives, and see what impact that would have in their purchasing or their general behavior, whether it's how they use transit, or how they navigate through challenging situations in their socioeconomic position in which they're in within that environment. And so it's just fascinating, because that's something that our world leaders are going to be using to model huge events around the world that could potentially happen, wars and energy crises and different things like that, and what impact it could have, but also for businesses. So if I'm, the example I think we used in that episode was, if there was a power outage that lasted for more than 72 hours,
consult a doctor.
Yeah. What is the purchase decisions that people make? Like, how do they change their purchase decisions? How many of them go out and buy generators? That kind of thing, which has some real implications for corporate Canada as well.
That's so interesting. I love hearing those type of stories. I don't know where they were when I was looking through your episodes, but they sound very interesting. So for the people at home who want to do something like this, to set out on a journey to interview this many people, what advice would you give to that non-existent person?
I think I would have to give the same advice I probably would give anybody who's wanting to start a business, and that is, you have to be persistent. You have to have a very clear goal in mind, and just block out the naysayers and block out the the imposter syndromes that you have internally yourself, and what you perceive to be a challenge in accomplishing that, and just get out there and really do it, and be methodical about it, and just tackle it day in and day out. And so, one of the things that has been really interesting as we've been doing it. So we started out as doing it once a week. And so the first, 20 podcasts or so, it was a real challenge to find people who would want to be on the show, because this is a non-existent show, essentially. Nobody knew about it. It was just something that I was beginning. And so there wasn't a big reach or anything like that for them. And so it was a bit of a challenge. And so that was a hurdle that I had to overcome, both in terms of the mechanics of getting them to invite them, find the time to do that, and get them to share their time with me, but then also to get over this fear that I would be rejected, that they wouldn't want to be on this show with, who wants to talk to this, bald guy who doesn't really have a show or any audience, right? It's one of those things where you had to get over some of that. So persistence is a big one. Be resilient. If you have some cancellations, just keep at it, and then just keep that rhythm going. And once the rhythm was established, and now we have people that are really wanting to be on the show, and they're reaching out to us, right? And so, so that's key. And then the other thing is surrounding yourself with people who can help you, produce it and help you distribute it, and so on. Because those are the difficult parts, I suppose. The easier part is just having conversations with people. But then how do you package it up? How do you get it distributed? How do you get either ears on the podcast or eyeballs onto the video? Those are challenging things as well. And so surround yourself with good people who can help you out in those areas.
So you've been at this, you've been doing the podcast for almost 2 years, maybe more.
Yeah, just over now.
your business, Amplify Media, has been around for almost 10, 11 years, almost 12. How have you amplified your business, and what on earth does that mean?
Oh, that's a good question. So I'll tackle the first. What does it mean, I guess? So when we first started Amplify Media, it was an animation company, actually. So we're just focused on creating animated explainer videos that explained, how this company or its products or services were the best damn whatever they were in their market or in their industry, or in the area in which they were serving. And so the tagline that we had at that point was amplify your message with motion. Because it's motion graphics is really technically the type of animation that we were doing. And so the amplification of the message through the power of video is really what we were selling, what we were packaging up for people so that they could reach their audience in a much more effective way. That really moved them to act, right? Whether that was to reach out and call them, or to book an appointment, or purchase the product right off of the website, whatever the case might be. And so we just carried that theme through when we started to expand our services, because one of the things that we found is that a lot of our customers, they didn't know how to utilize those videos really well after we produced them, because we kind of produced them and gave it to them, and they would put it on their website, or they might post it on social media a little bit, but they weren't really tying a bunch of other tactics to that video or around the video so that they could really create the return on that investment that was really warranted and possible. And so we wanted to amplify, the impact of that video and the impact that we could have on their business in terms of growth and really impacting their numbers. And so that's what Amplify Your Business and kind of really stemmed from with the show is then we took that amplify kind of I don't know, theme, I guess, and carried it forward and thought, okay, well, this is a platform for people to amplify their business, give them a platform to talk about what they do and what's so unique about their business. But then the listeners can be learning those lessons that will hopefully help them amplify the results within their business, because they could take, measurable, tips and tricks and advice from the show. So that's, I guess, the second part to that. How have we done it with Amplify Media? I mean, we practice what we preach, right? And so we walk that talk. And at the very beginning of COVID, as an example, everybody in our industry, in the marketing industry, we're finding that their clients were putting the brakes on all of their projects, really. Very few things were continuing. Some things got canceled. A lot of them got postponed and then canceled. And so there were, 2-3 really hard months in which there really wasn't any work. There wasn't any revenue coming in. And so it was really scary. And so you, as a business owner, and in our industry, we had one of two things we could do. And that was kind of shutter the doors, lay off people, and just wait until things turned around and came back. Or we would double down and practice what we were preaching in terms of really, expanding our messaging and getting ourselves out into the marketplace a lot more. And that's what I chose to do. So we didn't lay anybody off. We made a commitment to our team, because they are like family, and their families rely on, that income and so on. And so we didn't want to put them in jeopardy. And so we kept them on. And my promise was that we would burn through the reserves that we had in the company, right to the last dollar if we needed to keep everybody as long as we possibly could. Because my theory was, if we did a great job of doubling down on our own marketing and messaging out there, that when things did turn around, we'd have the team, the capacity to take on the work, because I thought that there would be a bunch of pent up demand. We just didn't know how long that was going to take. And thankfully, that paid off. And so we amplified, our messaging, we amplified our marketing, our branding, our positioning in the marketplace, and did things like Amplify Your Business, the podcast here, to get that broader reach and really establish ourselves as the thought leaders in our space and with our audience. So we built that community around us, and it served us really well. We've grown immensely through COVID, and it's been great.
So it didn't mean that you just went on the roof of your house with a megaphone and you're just like, hey, try Apple Media. That's not amplifying your business?
Yeah, well, that could be, I suppose. It wasn't the tactic that we took, for sure. So ours was much more in the digital space because obviously everything was shut down, so it had to be digital, and just making sure that we got the right messages out there through the channels that we had available to us, and
Great.
did some advertising and whatnot, and lots of virtual networking and so on. And that's the thing when you're doing good work, people notice, and I think people want to talk about it as well. And so just really reaching out and strengthening the relationships that we already had.
Yeah, exactly. So if Amplify Your Business becomes adapted to a TV series on Netflix, because they'll take anything, who would you get to play old Lance Johnson?
Boy, oh boy, that's a loaded one. I don't know. I mean, I think that the one that what was his name? The guy from Silver Spoons was a sitcom back in my childhood.
Yeah, you can see why I said old Lance Johnson.
Yeah, back in my childhood, which a lot of people when I was younger thought I looked a lot like him. But what the heck was his name? I can't think of his name right now. I don't know.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, I really don't know. I mean, Picard would be amazing. I mean, that would be fantastic. He nails the hair, right? So that would be incredible to have a guy like him play my role. That'd be fun.
Just has to be bald, right? That's the key, right?
Yeah, there's just one ingredient, man.
So do you always style your hair like that, or is it just for the show?
Yeah. No, I make sure I pay attention to the hair. You don't want anything out of place. But no, I've been doing this now for I don't know how many years. It's got to be close to 20 years, something like that. So yeah, it's been a long time.
Bruce Willis could always work out. I don't think he's dead yet. So, or Vin Diesel,
Oh yeah,
life a quarter mile at a time.
Yeah.
So, what is next for Amplify Your Business?
Well, we've pivoted to daily just a couple of weeks ago, actually. So we've had
congratulations.
We've had such a great response to the show that we were getting backlogged quite a bit with all the people who wanted to be on the show. And so we were recording and we realized, well, shoot, if we're only publishing this on a weekly basis, it's going to be months and months before we're going to be able to get the episode out. And some of the things are kind of timely that we're talking about. And so that just wasn't sitting well with me, especially through, the ups and downs of COVID. We don't want to be talking about a closure of, a COVID closure because when we're out of COVID, hopefully now for good. And so we wanted to make sure it was contextually right from a timeline. So we pivoted to doing 5 days a week. So that was kind of cool. And I think that's what you're going to see is just continue to interview, great entrepreneurs. I want to play around with the format a little bit. Our episodes right now are in that 30-minute range, about give or take, 20 to 30 minutes. And I'd like to do some testing just to see what some shorter episodes maybe would be like if people would respond better to shorter. It's just hard to do really good storytelling and letting our clients our guests, tell their stories fully in such a short period of time and still get into a lot of those lessons. So it's always tough how to tighten them up, but I would like to see how that impacts the numbers because I'm driven by the data, right? So that's what we do in our business. I like to see the data, do the split testing and see which one the audience is resonating with best. And so we'll probably do some experimentation there as well. Continue doing some in-person ones as well. I think expanding into the US a little bit, interviewing some of our aggressive entrepreneurs to the South. I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from them as well. So I think that'll be a lot of fun too.
Yeah. And boy, with the way you talk, I don't know how you're ever going to get it less than 30 minutes. This was supposed to be 15. I think we're at 25 already. So how can people get in touch with you if they'd like to be on the show?
Well, the easiest way is to head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca. There's an actual form there on that page that you can just click on and submit your contact information and your request to be on the show if you have an interesting entrepreneurial journey or story that you want to share. And obviously that same location too, you can access all the back issues actually of our episodes of Amplify Your Business there too. So Yeah, and there's contact information down at the bottom in the footer too, if you wanted to just reach out. And so that would be info@amplomedia.com. That's the best way to reach us.
Fantastic. Lance, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sure our one viewer appreciated it. I'll give you the virtual handshake, and we'll see you next time. Thanks, everyone, for joining us for the special 100th episode of Amplify Your Business. I'm not your host, but here I am with Lance Johnson, and congratulations on 100 episodes.
Thanks very much, Matt. Yeah, and we'll see everybody else in the next episode, I guess.